A very warm welcome. Good afternoon, and welcome to the ninth webinar in Compassionate Caring series that Caregiver Saathi offers once a fortnight. Today, the topic for our conversation is caregivers and caregiving for cancer and other terminal illnesses. I was just before this webinar thinking about the fact that we were so nervous when we were starting off these webinars, and here we are today on our ninth edition already. So I suppose um, we cannot afford to be nervous anymore, uh, but it is a delight to have so many of you who keep coming back. So that just reinforces to us that we are doing something right. So thank you for joining us and participating. Also grateful that you have helped spread the word. Please continue to do that. Give us feedback on what we can do better. And I look forward to hear from you in the future. So as always, for the newcomers, an introduction to Caregiver Saathi. What are we trying to do? So Caregiver Saathi is a social venture, and we aim to create an ecosystem of well-being and healing for the primary caregivers. So when there is a person who is unwell, usually there is someone else in the family, especially in a culture like India, who looks after the ill person. This person who is investing either time, money, or physical energy in looking after their loved one is the person we call the caregiver. There are many caregivers, but then there is one person who is the primary caregiver. So you could be a long distance caregiver, and you could be somebody who's a friend who stays in another place. Talking about the family caregivers or the primary caregivers who cohabit with the person who is unwell and invest a lot of time in physically, mentally, emotionally, financially supporting their loved one through the illness. So when there is terminal illness, and family caregivers of those navigating terminal illness have, or any other life limiting condition, frankly, have their unique challenges. And we would like to support them through their caregiving journeys and even beyond. Um, we wish to do this by creating an environment of well being by empowering the caregiver. Empowering here is crucial because as a system and as a society, we would like for both the family member who is unwell, the care receiver, as well as the caregiver to lead full lives. And this can be done only when we feel choiceful and we feel empowered. So that is the reason that we have tried to set up Caregiver Saathi so that we can be the Saathi to the caregiver. How do we do this? We do this through technology-enabled systems, but you can never undermine human connection. So human connection is important, but for that we need awareness programs that are both online and offline. Webinars these days, thanks to the pandemic, we need to do more of the online programs, but there is a different merit to the offline programs. We have a helpline to support caregivers who can reach out to us for their specific needs and information. We also run healing circles, which are support groups for caregivers, irrespective of the health condition that they are supporting. So these are not medical health driven support groups, but they are healing circles or support groups for caregivers in general. This is also applicable for caregivers who are active, that means they are caregiving today, as well as experienced caregivers, which means that they have finished their caregiving journey but can contribute to the active caregivers today. We are nothing today without social media communication, so we have a social media platform through which we build the connection. We also have an online support group, which is on Facebook. We provide access to relevant information to the caregivers. The World Wide Web is really large. Everything is available. However, working through that information can be quite overwhelming, especially when you're dealing with an illness. So therefore, accessing relevant information in bite-sized forms when it is required becomes a crucial need for caregivers, and that is what we are aiming to address. Finally, we are aiming to create a tech-enabled support system through our website, our platform, as well as our app. I hope many of you who are on this call today will download the app, which is available both on iOS as well as Android. Use it and give us feedback on what can be done to make it better. In fact, when you know caregivers, encourage them to use the app as well. So what have we built so far? We have built a technology-enabled support system, which is a platform, an app, and a website. We do training programs, awareness sessions, which are both online and offline. Offline is more of a workshop mode, and workshop mode is about helping you build skills. These online programs are about creating awareness. So first awareness, then more practice and skill building. We have an app, we have a community both on Facebook as well as WhatsApp. We are available on other social media handles and are hoping to build our following there as well. This is the most important part, and I'd like to focus on this, which is our caregiver stories. We call caregivers gentle warriors. I think they are, warriors seems to be the theme of the recent times, but caregivers are gentle and they are invisible. So you could call them gentle, invisible warriors. It is important for them to tell their story, not just for themselves, but also for other caregivers, so that both can feel healed, can heal in the process. So if you know of caregivers who would like to share their stories, do encourage them to connect with us. Compassionate caring is our awareness building programs, which is about speaking with experts and their perspective on caregiving and caregivers. These webinars are a part of the Compassionate Caring series. There are some videos that are available on our YouTube channel already. And these webinars are open for people to participate in and will also be available as resources in the coming months. We provide caregiver coaching, which is one-on-one coaching and holding to support caregivers as they go through their caregiving journey. Family counseling, because while there is a primary caregiver, caregiving has to be a load that has to be shared by the family, whether or not they cohabit. So family counseling becomes absolutely essential, especially in terminal illnesses when there is a significant amount of emotion and challenges like dealing with grief, end of life, and so on. Finally, we have a volunteer-based respite care program, and all of you or people you know who may wish to volunteer with our organization can get in touch with us and participate in the volunteer program so that we can help build a world where care and caregiving is as normal as anything else. Like I said, you could get involved in many ways, which could be participating in the healing circles, caregiving stories, spreading the word, volunteering, helping us raise funds, participate in our internship program. This year, we have had more than 30 interns. And finally, help us build partnerships with hospitals and other organizations. This is the framework that we use, and our framework is about, so how do we empower caregivers? We empower caregivers by looking at 7 elements of their well-being and helping them build practices of resilience. These 7 elements are physiological well-being, financial and legal well-being, psychological well-being, spiritual well-being, social well-being, life and work purpose, and creative expression. Stress is caused when there is an imbalance in these elements of well-being. You could be overall in a sense of a balance, but some of these elements could be off balance. When when there is stress and there is unaddressed chronic stress over a long period of time, it can even cause mental health issues. What can we do? We can build resilience through practices that address mind, body, and soul. And with that, I would like to move to our today's session, which is about overall well being for a particular medical condition. When you say palliative care or you say terminal illness, the first big condition, the first big illness that comes to our mind, perhaps thanks to our movies, is cancer, and the big C word. And, cancer has all kinds of associations in our minds, thanks to the movies that we may have seen, or thanks to the experiences perhaps we've had with our friends and colleagues. What we would like to do is look at, in this particular session, caregiving and caregivers when there is cancer in the family. This is a very vast subject, and it will be impossible to address everything that you may have as questions. But I will encourage you to write your questions and participate as we go through our session today. Today's session is a little unusual. The person that we are interacting with is Dr. Rajiv Sarin. Dr. Rajiv Sarin is an eminent personality with immense experience in the area of oncology. Professor Rajiv Sarin is the former director of the Advanced Center for Treatment, Research and Education, Tata Memorial Center, Mumbai. He is in charge of Cancer Genetics Unit and Professor of Radiation Oncology at TMC. He was trained in clinical oncology and radiation oncology at the Royal Marsden Hospital and TMH. He has more than 2 decades of experience in oncology. He has so many stories in his repertoire that it's quite incredible. He established the first Indian Comprehensive Clinical Laboratory Cancer Genetics Service at TMH, and he leads the ICMR Center for Advanced Research in Cancer Genetics and Genomics at APTREC. His research interests include cancer genetics, breast cancer, technology development, and public health. He has about 100 scientific publications on cancer management, cancer genetics, and radiotherapy. He serves as a member of the Ethics Pathology Working Groups and International Cancer Genome Consortium. In his capacity as an expert advisor in various committees and task forces of Indian medical and scientific funding bodies like CSIR, ICMR, DBT, and in various developing world forums, he has contributed towards developing cancer control, cancer research, and low-cost technology development programs in these regions. As a leader of the very few comprehensive cancer research centers in the developing world, and as the executive editor of the main cancer journal from the developing world, which is Journal of Cancer Research and Therapeutics, JCRT, he has championed the cause of open access to medical literature and public health issues such as access and cost of cancer care. What a delightful resume to go through. But I have to share with you that my personal relationship with Dr. Rajiv Sarin is that I reached out to him on a whim, literally. I wanted to get in touch with some oncologist who would support our Caregiver Saathi endeavor. I found that he had deep interest in caregivers and caregiving. I literally called him and said, I want to talk to you about this. And he said, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. If you I will know whether or not I want to support you after 15 minutes. Uh, it's my personal accomplishment that when I spoke with him, we ended up having a long conversation of 2 hours. And we are delighted at Caregiver Saathi to have Dr. Rajiv Sarin as our supporter, our mentor, and someone who has totally encouraged us. Other than this, I absolutely delight in his zest for life, despite all the work and the challenging circumstances that he might be with, in tough OPDs. He is always full of life. So we didn't want any technical glitches in the session today. So what we have done is for today, we have recorded the session and I will be playing that recording, but Dr. Sareen will join us for the question answer session soon after the recording. I'm going to encourage you to pay attention to these admin announcements. We will go through the interview that I did with him a couple of hours ago. And during this interview, you are welcome to write your questions. This is a recording that we will be doing, but your questions will not be used or referenced anywhere else. You cannot, so it is an interview and you cannot have, you cannot raise your hand during the interview. I will, however, be making notes and making sure that your questions are addressed once Dr. Rajiv Sarin joins today. I will request you to keep your microphone muted so that we can minimize background noises and make sure that you're seated and your camera is stable. Otherwise, it can be rather distracting. Um, we will be recording this, so this is for your information. However, no private information will be used publicly. Please do deploy your personal discretion about what is it that you want to share here. If you would like to have one-on-one interaction, you can drop us a question with that reference and we will help you. So here is the interview that I had just a couple of hours ago. Good afternoon, Dr. Sarin.
Hello, good afternoon.
Lovely to have you, and thank you. Thank you for now being a part of the Compassionate Caring webinar series. Oops. I know it's very, very hectic for you, and which is why we have decided to have this recording today so that we have no technical glitches. Actually, personally, I think that thank you for mentoring Caregiver Saathi and me personally for this venture. So, thank you for making the time today.
Thank you, Bhavna.
I would like to have this interview like a question answer session.
I think that's best. The real thing comes out in that.
So, as an oncologist, a genetic oncologist, a teacher for medical students, I'd like to ask you, how do you see caregivers, caregiving, and its significance?
See, all of us in our personal capacity and our professional capacity develop a perspective over years. So there was a time when someone had asked me caregiver. So you said what caregiver? And I will use both Hindi and English together so that the audience is also mixed. So we say उसका रिश्तेदार की तरह सगे वाला मुंबई में होती है उसका सगे वाले को बुलाओ. So ever since I was a medical student, we knew that that caregivers और सगे वाला या रिश्तेदार या दोस्त कभी कभी होता है या बाजू वाला भी बोलते हैं कभी. और समटाइम्स जो बाजू के बेड में होता है वो भी caregiver बन जाता है. So वो बाजू वाला. We knew that we as doctors depended on them for so many things. What we wanted the patient to have or not have, instructions or care. And then as a doctors, you we are focused on what we do in the hospital or in the clinic in the hospital. And once the patient goes home, we just hope that they'll be able to take care of. And normally, when we discharge a patient, we see that the patient is stable enough. But there's one aspect which, as you grow older, you realize you see life in a different way in your own family, in your society, in your neighborhood, in your friends' family. You see that life is not just switch on off. That this is the bad days. You are in the hospital, doctors, nurses caring for you, and you become absolutely fine. You go home and you just no problem. Actually, there's a term called chronic diseases. Chronic means when it lasts for long. One, there are two kinds of diseases that can be divided into many ways. But one way is acute illness, and the other is chronic illness. Sometimes the acute illness results in a chronic illness, like someone has an accident or has a fracture, and then fracture doesn't heal, or during the fracture it's an acute event, it's a trauma, and or someone develops a paralysis, then that's a chronic, and then their issues will come up. So in the hospital setting, we realize that the caregivers are very important in the hospital setting, and later on, as a social in a society, as an individual, realize that a patient who has a chronic illness, and chronic illness means especially a disease which causes debility, which affect their functionality. Functionality will be at two levels. Human beings, one is we are functional at a physical level, we talk, we walk, we do things with our hands and all. Other is functionality at mental level and psychological level. So many times, and these are all linked. Actually, there's a term known as psychosomatic illnesses also. So what happens that psycho means the mind, how it thinks, somatic means the body. So human body and mind and psyche are very intimately related, and they affect each other. So we have seen that patients rely, especially those who have a chronic disease, they have a lot of physical problems in terms of functionality, psychological problems, and whenever this happens, there will be financial problems, relationship problems. There's so many, and uh, this is the time that they become vulnerable. Vulnerable primarily because they are unable to do care for themselves, and human beings just don't care for us. We have to do things to earn our bread, to live in a society, to be productive, to enjoy the world. Just to enjoy the world. Many times you have to be functional, and these people then rely heavily on the caregiver. And so the caregiver are so important for the world. I would say the society, the caregivers, for the human world, caregivers are very important because anyone who's born, before they die, they would require caregiver support. It could be during their childhood, during our adult life, during our old age. And some of us would be unfortunate to require caregiver support for a long period. It could be months or sometimes years, and major support, not just little bit of help here and there. So when over a period of years, I've realized that caregivers are very vital for the human world, for that person who needs the support. And as a doctor, I can tell you, in the medical world, caregivers are very important. If there were no caregivers, then as doctors, we would not be able to do half as much as we are able to do for our patients. Many patients will not get the treatment because who will look after the patients. Many patients will not be discharged, or they'll be kept for a long time. They will just languish in the hospital. So caregivers are very important. And when you first approached me, so that was the first time when someone was talking about caregivers. Everyone always talked about the patient and the need for their caregivers. That's what we all.
Yeah.
So as you first came, your focus was on the caregiver, which was very odd. No one talks about caregivers. They are supposed to provide care. If your mother is not well, or if your wife is seriously ill, or if your husband is ill, or your son is unable to walk, uh, you know, it's a second nature. Humans is second nature to help, and when it's your own near and dear one, you have to help. So I mean, don't have to ask any questions on that. But so what I like that caregiver Saathi, the focus was on the caregivers, which is very unusual, which is very rare. and they caregivers themselves. And why we need to speak for caregivers? Because caregivers are so engrossed they don't speak sometimes. And anyone, and so initially the patient who required caregiver was vulnerable, but over a period of time the caregiver himself or herself becomes vulnerable. And I think those who are vulnerable, like the children, their women, anyone who is vulnerable in society, others need to think about them, work for them, and speak and give them a voice, and that's really helps them to really make a big difference for the patient they are caring.
Thank you for saying that because I would have asked you, so how do you relate with Caregiver Saathi and what's your relationship and how do you see your personal experience? Is there a story from your life that you think is, you know, um, makes you have a personal connection with caregivers?
See, there is no one in this world whose life has not been touched by caregivers, and I am no exception. I have seen it in the family, for my own self. I have seen how people have dedicated their life as caregivers. Fortunately, I never had so far the privilege or opportunity or whatever you can call it, misfortune that I had to be caregiver for a very long time for someone. And I say caregiver, see, doing something is one thing, being caregiver, that means you are spending a significant amount of your daily routine activities on someone's care. Doing something for half an hour or 1 hour or 2 hours, that is not really, I mean, that is also giving care, but you're not devoting a significant amount of time. So I have so many examples. I've seen people, and I have seen only good caregivers. Actually, but I know, I'm very sorry to say, I always thought caregivers, especially someone has serious illness, they will be always good caregivers. I was talking to one of our social workers. She uh, and they also attend in palliative care. Sometimes when cancer or any other disease become very advanced, you cannot be cured. So they what we call the home care. So we go and visit the places. So these social workers used to visit them. So I said, well, the patients depend so much on caregivers and look after. And what she told me that many times the caregivers are very abusive. Patient को गाली देते हैं. Okay? तो कभी कोई कोई होते हैं पेशेंट को मारते भी हैं. I mean, and this happened just few years ago. I was such a shock that how can this happen? But when I went back and reflected, then I saw that is not. Then I asked the question: is that exceptional or does it happen commonly? And what made me sad is when she told me this happens very common. And mind you, she was talking to a strata of society which have very limited means. They live in one small, mostly in the slums, a small room. There are 4 or 5 people. Most people don't have a secure job where they can apply for 6 months, leave, a long leave or a half pay leave. They don't go to work. They don't. So that is the other spectrum. I'm introducing this concept right in the beginning. Why I'm saying that? Because caregivers is not just caregivers are always wonderful and they do huge amount of good for the person they're caring for. There is a other extreme sometimes, and what has happened? No one starts out like that.
Yes.
We can make a difference when patient are first diagnosed with cancer. The people who come to us first time, their caregivers, they are in a very different frame of mind. But so what happens that the caregiver who started as a caregiver thinking of devoting his or her life, in the end becomes a caregiver, you don't want to talk about it. So there's a whole experience in caregiving which goes through the mind of the caregiver. And I don't want to tell one or two stories. There are so many stories. I'm just telling. I've seen caregivers who are so good. You can't believe. Sometimes you can't believe that a human being could be so good. No story. The real life stories are such that no, fiction or a movie can capture the the what a human being can do. At the same time, sometimes people, I won't say they are wicked, but they can be so cruel, and what they do to people who they are supposed to care for, who they are vulnerable, and who they are sort of in charge. So this whole spectrum, it sort of cuts across. And I think as caregivers, most of us have experienced how major difference we, make impact we make upon people. We feel sometimes, I will talk about it later when it comes to that, we sometimes feel pity on caregivers. Bechare, या बेचारी देखो बेचारी की अपनी लाइफ की कुछ नहीं, but there are a lot of things which sort of go to that, and I think our mindset is conditioned. In Indian mindset, we're supposed to look after family members and all that, and then everyone else would have just pity, with sympathy. आओ बेचारी क्या करे, उसका हस्बैंड भी 3 साल से बेड पे पड़ा हुआ है ना, तो वो बेचारा क्या करे, उसको अपने स्कूल छोड़ना पड़ा उसके मदर के साथ ऐसा. So these are some of the things which I have noticed, and I have noticed how they really impact not just one person; it impacts so many people.
Sometimes the whole family, perhaps.
Yeah, always it impacts the whole family, not sometimes. There has seldom a patient who requires caregiver support for a long period. It is not just between those two people. There are each one of us have it affects the entire family and sometimes the society.
Yes. So, in your experience, and you have seen caregivers or caregiving, you find that different caregivers handle the situation differently. Some are compassionate, caring, and they put their lives on hold, and then there could be some who get burnt out and are evil and wicked and perhaps are even abusive as well. There's the whole spectrum. In your experience and your advice, how do you think caregivers should handle when they get to know that now I will have to be the caregiver? Let's say the diagnosis is announced for the patient.
Yeah. Okay, so first and foremost, no one ever asks for that role, but I want to be a caregiver. It just comes on you. It sort of lands, or that suddenly one day all of us, in different phases of our life, even someone may be 60-year-old or 65-year-old, you can't doesn't mean that that person doesn't have any plans or something they want to do. Maybe a 15-year-old, maybe 50-year-old, maybe 60-year-old. People always have plans for themselves, what they want to do for others, what they want to do, and then suddenly all the plans come crashing. When, like, I'll give an example of cancer. But typically, what happens when someone is diagnosed with cancer? First of all, it is suspected. They had some symptoms and someone suspects it could be cancer. The moment someone uses that word that this could be cancer, all hell, panic. Phone calls will go here and there, and these days people have mobiles everywhere it goes. And then once the diagnosis is confirmed, there is a gloom sort of sets in. Then the panic. Okay, what do we do? Then they would have heard. And in our country, unfortunately, anyone nothing to do with their age or literacy. Everyone would have some piece of advice, how, where to go, what to do to cure it. And once the diagnosis is made, they in cancer setting, so it may someone cancer may be cured entirely, but once the diagnosis is made, people imagine the worst. They may not vocalize it, but they imagine the worst in terms of cancer. Then the next thing which comes to mind, yeah, people are practical also when they are emotional, that where the money would come, where would we go? So like people know Tata Hospital is a very good hospital for cancer. Everyone hasn't come to Mumbai, and they have heard stories about how difficult it is in Mumbai. Where will we go? Where will we stay? And there was a time when people will come and stay with relatives or neighbors. Now people try to find their own way. The relatives may not even welcome them. So, and then you have to first thing is on who will come with the patient. सबसे पहले होता है कौन जाएगा patient के साथ. If a man is going to obviously उसकी wife तो आएगी साथ में. So that is taken for granted. Okay, this whether she is working or whoever she is doesn't matter. Okay, if a man, suppose a 40-year-old man has been diagnosed with lung cancer or any mouth cancer, his wife has to be there. She has to look after her. पुराना वो चला. Then, so, but we know that wife may not be able to, so who else will come? If a grown up son is there, he may be coming. Then, so the first thing starts there in a cancer journey. टाटा बॉम्बे में टाटा हॉस्पिटल के साथ में 2-3 लोग पहुंच जाएंगे, तो सबको मालूम होता है एक जने के जाने से नहीं होगा, 2-3 लोग चाहिए होते हैं. शुरू में in the I'm making distinction between the acute phase and the chronic phase. For acute phase of the illness, a lot of well wishers just sort of come out, they mushroom from everywhere. But most people are just basically being advised. But there are few people who, out of goodness of their heart, or they feel so motivated, they actually come forward. Most of the patients actually who reach here or who land here, they would have two, three people with them, and mostly they'll be from close family and sometimes close friends, good friends also. That is there. During treatment, they cannot stay, and then finally, when the chronic phase, suppose someone is cancer is cured, and but they have severe symptoms, they require support, like someone had a brain tumor, can't walk or talk properly, walk, or someone had any mouth cancer, major surgery, radiation has been done, they can't eat properly, or there are many other issues. Someone had breast cancer, their arms are swollen, they can't do the functioning. So in the chronic phase, or what we call cancer survivors, many of them would require modest amount of caregiver sort of support. And unfortunately, in our country, still around 60% of cancers come in advanced stage. They are treated, but many of them recur or come back within 6 months or 1 year. And then the last 6 months or 1 year of their life, many of them are incapacitated to various degrees. Sometimes they are functional to a large extent, but generally in the last few months of their life, they are unable to do much for themselves. So every cancer patient would require caregiver either during the initial period of illness and treatment, during chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, or if their cancer comes back and in the last phase of their life. So they they require that caregiver. And caregiver, as told you, people who, women invariably, I gave the role of, I mentioned the example of a wife. So wife is expected. If a person is there, say, 60-year-old, if there's a daughter who's, say, 23, 24, who's not married, she is expected, unless until it has been fixed, she would be expected, you know, as in comparison to a brother. Brother will study for IIT or whatever coaching or bank exam, but this sister of his who may be much more clever and brighter than her brother, she would be expected to pack her bags and come with the family and stay in the lodge for 3, 4 months during her father's treatment along with their mother. So that invariably happens, and that is how society works. I don't think we can change the society. What I'm talking of, the long-term care. Long-term care, I have seen so many examples. I mean, it is not an exception. First, as divided up. Women have completely dropped their career plans, their jobs, everything their job, and plans for marriage. They decided not to marry because and after some stage they just, and in the end what happens, they are left completely alone. They just hundreds of advisors, and many times it's so cruel. The advisor, people who ask or who interrogate them actually are people from their family, their siblings, who may be sometimes in the same city. ये किया क्या, वो किया, मम्मी को ये दिया क्या, मम्मी को आज ठीक से सुबह से नहलाया क्या, उनका फेस उतना फ्रेश नहीं दिख रहा था. So that is very cruel. People, don't, should not do that. And all these things lead to burnout. When I was talking about burnout, burnout doesn't happen in a day, in a week, in 2 weeks. We see patients, the same dedicated caregiver over a period of time, sometimes it becomes indifferent, and because the burnout is setting. And what happens at their home, we do not know. And I think there are various things which I think you all are doing this, and we will talk about later how to prevent this burnout of caregivers.
Absolutely. So, for example, I think you made a very important point about the gender differences in caregivers. For example, even if there is a son and a daughter, the way the life comes to a whole for a son or is different from how it comes to a whole for a daughter. How it comes to a whole for a wife is different from how it comes to, like for example, even as a young mother, I remember being told कि इतना क्या करियर होता है बच्चे को पाल लो पहले. Whereas I don't think my husband would have had to hear that कि like अपने करियर को छोड़ दो, अभी बच्चा है बच्चे को पालो.
Yeah, that's a very pointed point, you made.
That after all, motherhood is this and motherhood is that and so on. Taking the same point when it comes to terminal illnesses or cancer in the family, it will be कि इससे ज़्यादा important क्या होता है, right? How can your career be more important than the illness? Although many times getting the income, just getting, because everybody doesn't have insurance, medical insurance.
Yeah. Very few people have, very few people.
And then the compulsion, KJ, should I work? Should I get the income? That exhausts me, or should I provide the caregiving? Oops. Oops. Good afternoon. So sorry. I tried to respond to the chat and here I am.
The patient. सबसे पहले होता कौन जाएगा patient के साथ? Sorry. If a man is going to obviously उसकी or what we call cancer survivors, many of them would require modest amount of caregiver sort of support. जैसे नहलाया कि आप उनका face इतना fresh. Like for example, even as a young mother, I remember being engaged with the extended friends and family. Yes, terminal illnesses or cancer in the family, it will be कि इससे ज़्यादा important क्या होता है, right? How can your career be more important than the illness? Although many times getting the income, just getting, because everybody doesn't have insurance, medical insurance. Yeah. Very few people have, very few people. And then the compulsion, KJ, should I work? Should I get the income? That exhausts me, or should I provide the caregiving? And then what is the role? So, what do you think? How should a caregiver engage with the extended friends and family, especially when there is an illness like cancer? So sometimes the best thing is not to engage with many people, depending which phase of caregiving you are and what is your state of mind. Sometimes they are so stressed because see the way the friends and family interact with them. Unfortunately, what I've seen, what happens in the cancer patient family is that they are just give very superficial or frivolous advice. Giving advice is so easy. I mean, just I diamond doesn't. You just I like ideas that diamond doesn't. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? People have, and that is one thing. Then people show sympathy. People don't have empathy. No one puts themselves in the shoe of the person, of the caregiver. What this person must be going through, what time they sleep, what time do they get up, and it starts from there. You slept at 2 o'clock, and the night also you have a light sleep because mom may get up and she may fall, and then again 6 o'clock you have to get the milk and all that. So they're not putting themselves. So from the perspective of the family, and I'm talking about close family and friends, they have more of sympathy rather than empathy. They want to give advice, free advice in which they don't have to do anything. Okay, it's so easy to give advice, I can tell you. And as a result, many times the caregivers, they just shut off. They get so bugged by talking, just by talking to listen. They have listened enough. They said, "ये मैं बात हजार बार मेरे को सब लोग बता दिया, मेरे को अभी मत बता, मेरे को पता है." So, but still, what happens in that state of mind, they might find that there'll be one or two people with whom they can connect. Okay? Maybe an old person, maybe a young person, it may not be necessarily your sister or brother, it may be a friend, it could be anyone with whom they can connect, who actually has empathy for them. And so that is the most important. So connect to a person who has empathy for your situation. Okay? Second is person who knows your family situation. It's a very each family the situation is very different, and it's not just how big the house is, or on which floor, or how many rooms, what is your finances, what is the relationship, what kind of lifestyle previously your family had. Each family had very different. So someone first thing is someone who has some empathy for you, you can connect with them. The person knows about your family, about you as a person also is very important because we are not just our age and gender and height and weight. Each one of us are different. One person who knows you also, reasonably. Then the person, that these are the basic attributes. If any of these things are missing, I think just interacting with that person is not going to help. Once these things are there, then if you are lucky, that person also happens to be knowledgeable, or maybe in a position where if they don't have knowledge, they can connect you to people who have the knowledge or the right kind of person. So I think that is very important, because initially a caregiver will not directly, they are so engrossed, because as I said, this role just thrust on them one fine, morning or night, they suddenly realize that they have become caregiver. And from acute caregiver, they have become chronic caregiver. So connecting to such a person is very important. And but hopefully one day, if people like you all, caregiver Saathi, it sort of reaches out to the public, that someone who is not lucky enough to have in their family and friend circle, who's empathetic, who knows their family situation, knows you, and also has knowledge, that they also come to like caregiver Saathi, and through that find out, the way out, how to, negotiate. So it could be like when we are stuck like that, when we go to an unforeseen place, we have not been there before. What do? We use Google Maps. Okay? और गूगल मैप में सबसे पूछ पूछ के जाते थे, और इंडिया में पता है जो पूछ के जाता है, बोले वो किधर है, किधर ही बोलते हैं किधर है. Okay? That person may have no clue. So asking people who have no clue what is to be done, sometimes it is counterproductive. Yeah. So that is what my message is.
So, you think caregivers should get training for themselves when they realize my family member has cancer? Do you think there's any training that they can get?
I think it is very important. What they are getting into very serious business. It is not trivial. Just because no formal name, like motherhood को इतना नाम दिया, motherhood, okay, fatherhood, caregiver, though there is no name. Okay, you, because you work in that space, so you talk, some doctors and nurses know the caregiver. वो तो caregiver क्या caregiver?
Correct. Many people tell me that caregiver is that attendant that you have.
Attendant, caregiver. Okay. So first of all, there is no identity of the caregiver. So and they just land up, and most people have not thought through what caregiver goes through. Because one reason I also blame the caregivers, they don't tell what they are doing. Okay, and only a crying baby gets a milk. They don't tell. I think they feel, and I think for the goodness of their heart, they don't speak. They feel that, feel bad. I am looking after my father, or I am looking after my brother. If I start complaining about myself, what will people think about me?
Correct, absolutely.
Okay. So they first keep quiet, and then it becomes their second nature. And for 4 years you haven't said a word, and then suddenly you start to pulling it. इसको क्या हो गया? What happened to you? What happened?
ये कराए थे पानी फेर दिया इतने.
हाँ, तब ठीक, इतने 4 साल इतनी सेवा की, और अभी देखो क्या हो गया. ये बोल रहे हैं कि मेरे को अभी हॉलीडे पे जाना है ना, मेरे को ये कोर्स करना है, कि क्या कर रही हो उसको. So it is the more they get involved into the role, they sort of start sinking. So I think during the acute phase, no one knows what is going to happen. Everyone is very hopeful things would improve and all. But I think once it becomes clear that I will have to be a caregiver for a long time, that person has to go back in a quiet moment when they are not very emotional. We go through, when you are very emotional, you not think clearly. In a quiet moment when you are not very emotional, go back and think. First and foremost, of course, what is the requirement? What is immediate, short term, medium term, long term? Then you have to think about this. I am also a human being. So, what of maybe everything you will not be able to do because of your caregiver's role, but some of the things you will be able to. So first and foremost, so you rediscover yourself, and unless until you are in the frame of mind, you rediscover yourself, you will not be able to train also. So once you sort of come to that yes, I am also a human being, I also have some aspirations. Of course, my duty as a sister or as a brother or as a son is to look after my father or after my mother. I will do that. Then they have to train themselves. And training is at various levels. One thing, and I'll talk of various things. This is I'm not getting into the financial aspects of it because that's a completely, it will vary from different people. Because money, actually, a lot of people are thinking, So realizing first and foremost getting hold of a resource. And when someone becomes a mother, earlier the grandmother or the mother used to tell कि जब माँ बनूंगी तो ये होगा वो होगा. These days many young mothers don't even want to listen what their mothers or grandmothers are saying. Forget grandmothers, they only listen what their mothers are saying because they know मम्मी को पता नहीं. Okay, they will tell this thing. So what do? They read a book. Of course, these days online resources are there. So even though motherhood is a very natural instinct, which comes very naturally. So caregiver is also an equally important role. And mind you, those, I mean, we have only seen, I have never been like been awake whole night. But if motherhood is a demanding role, caregiver could sometimes be even more important. And when you become a mother, you are 25, 29, 30, 32. So you are physically much more stronger. You are able to do much more multitasking. And during that motherhood, the body, because when you are made a mother by the nature, it also gives you that ability to handle. But at the age of 55, when you become a caregiver, you are not the same person. I think there's one more very big difference, which is that motherhood comes with this hope कि ये बच्चा बड़ा होगा. Yes, yeah, very important. So whereas in the case of illness, yeah, there is this anxiety, fear, death, time. Yeah, difficult. So you very good, nicely you contrasted. So in motherhood, they hope that things will get better and beautiful, and the child just smiles. You just forget everything. But when you are providing care for a disabled person, that person is not even able to give a smile, decent smile. Sometimes you force them to smile, take a picture, but how much stress they are to even put up a smile. And then future is very uncertain. So the training for caregivers, once they realize they are into it, first thing, rediscover themselves completely, don't engross them. Very important, within the family there should be discussion, and sometimes this doesn't happen. Who all will share the caregiving burden? Yes. This is a serious discussion, much more important than discussion about property and anything else. Yes. Okay. And in the long, who all will share the caregiving and some sacrifice? If suppose there are 4 brothers and sisters, or 8 children or 5 children, as much as possible, this burden should be shared. Sometimes one person, one sibling may not be in a position. So I think if there's love between brothers and sisters, they understand and they give leeway. Some people, actually most people will come forward, I will do more. But you have to see that just because of the goodness of their heart, one person is not sort of sacrificing his or her life. So sharing of the caregiving. These days, unfortunately, unlike what used to happen 30, 40 years ago, a large joint family, so the sharing became very natural. Yeah. So you go to college, after you come back home, you look after your grandfather for 2, 3 hours, read the newspaper, do all that, and then someone else will take care. Yes. But these days, with nuclear family, that is not. And sometimes they have a single child, and I've seen actually quite a few such cases where there's a couple, young couple, husband and wife, they have a small children, and so they will have two set of parents, two grandparents for that little boy or girl. Sometimes all three or four of them are ill, disabled. Someone has cancer, someone has stroke, someone has severe uncontrolled diabetes, someone has severe osteoarthritis. So suddenly, these two young people have to not only look after their child, they have to look after two either elderly or disabled parents. And they don't have a brother or a sister. And I think it will be too much to expect that your cousins will come and do this for you. Okay? And so then that, and I think this scenario is going to become more and more common. This scenario is going to become more and more common, especially in large metropolitan cities, that you don't even have people to share your burden. Okay? And in this setting, there is no other way but for them to take it very seriously. They know there is no exit strategy. What they have to do, they have to live their life as a caregiver, they have to train. And fortunately, people like you and the organization are there to train people. There are various tools, and they can actually help. And at some stage, if they feel, it happens with all the caregivers. At some stage, they feel that they are unable to think for themselves. They are unable to take, or they have taken a decision, but later on they realize that what they decided was not rational. They wouldn't have normally, decided upon that. So this is a time when they should connect with others, not just others who will give them your rice or your advice, but others who are going through a similar journey in life. So that's what we call support group. In cancer and many other neurological diseases, there are a lot of support groups. So suddenly they realize that there are so many people who have very similar experience, and they would also see people who have figured out how to get out of it, or live life despite that. It doesn't. Life doesn't come. Should stop. So one is a support group, and sometimes you are unable to even extract the good things from the support group because your state of mind is such that you are not receptive to anything. That is true. It is a form of a burnout or a psychological stress. So I think that's why you require what we call psychological counseling. In our society, there is a taboo against counseling. It will get psychological psychiatrist पागल हो गया क्या वो बोलेगा. So counseling means they talk to you, they understand what is in your mind. Are you reacting how most people would react, or is your reaction unusual? There could be psychotherapy, there could be various kinds of therapy, or just sometimes just telling your story itself is such a relief. It's healing. It's healing, you relieve, and suddenly then you are in a position to think for yourself. So training, I think there's no one book you can read for caregiver use, but there's certain aspects in training. Like suppose you're looking after someone who's bedridden. Yes. You do not know simple things how to change. When you go to a hospital, someone admitted, the two nurses will come there, thing just weighing 45 kg, and a big hefty man is there. They will change the bed sheet just done like this. How they have done, you would not even know. Okay? Because they have learned a technique how to change, make the bed. Okay, they will know how to do the clean yourself. So all these things require what you say little bit of training. Watching YouTube videos, how to look after a paraplegic. What could be the problems, back problem. So what happens, which is very distressing to see also, people who are bedridden for long, sometimes they develop bed sores. So how you can avoid bed sores? What are the early signs of bed sores? How you can care after the back? Like in the hospital, when like in Tata Hospital, if you have a patient who develops paraplegia or cannot walk, paralyzed, so before we discharge, so one of the very important things is that the nurse, we tell the as doctor, we tell the nurse, इस patient का caregiver कौन है. हम लोग caregiver term use करते हैं कि इसका relative कौन है, patient का सगे वाला कौन है. So that relative has to, and we first follow that relative is not there just because no one else is there, who will be staying with the patient. And they are taught how to provide for back care, how to do the massage, and all those things. Someone may be having a catheter for a long time. किसी को rice tube जो नाक से जो nasogastric feed through करते हैं. So that's very important. So and if nurses and this thing is there, they tell you sometimes you forget. So you ask their permission. Can I record this? What you are telling me? These days, fortunately, most people have a phone in which can, so you record that. Look at YouTube videos. Train yourself. Ask questions. Yeah. And attend support group meetings. Yes, yes. Get one-on-one support and learn. And actually, caregiving can be very gratifying also. Actually, it can be a source of joy. It can be hugely. What you brought out is that I've seen so many people, after you lose a near and dear one, there's a bereavement. There's a process. Bereavement is a process at different phases of bereavement. Yes. And those who have been caregivers, say someone may have devoted their life, but they also know in their heart whether they were effective or not. Okay. Sometimes you are not effective just because you didn't know how to be effective. So a caregiver who has been effective, who has been able to lessen the pain and misery of the person they they were caring for, they never have a complicated bereavement. So they have only good memories. Whereas those who have do not know how to, provide that care to lessen the burden, sometimes they get nightmares that my mother used to scream in the night, my father used to, fall so often, and I was not able to do anything. So people who have and they know what they have done, and they don't look for others, saying that they know in their heart what they've done, and just by that they feel so satisfied. They feel fulfilled. Some of them feel that my purpose of my life was this. But my message again to caregivers is you may feel that the purpose of your life was to care for your near and dear one, but there is a larger purpose also behind life. Each one of us are individual. We are creation of nature. We are all individually bright, and we should not be so self-effacing that our caregiver role consumes us completely. So be yourself, and if you are yourself also, you will be more effective caregiver. You will feel happier about it. Later, after 5 years, 10 years, I guess I was effective, and you are more gainful for your family and productive for yourself and the family and the society. So, my final message for caregivers is that seeing that you are alone, you've never asked for it, but you've landed up in a role. What you do is hugely appreciated. People may not say it, everyone doesn't come and say that, but everyone understands. At least in the medical world, again, we don't say, but we understand, and actually, we'll be dysfunctional completely. There are very few countries, some European countries, where the state will take care of you. Other places, the caregivers will have to do that. Will depend on you. You are special people, those who provide to our long-term caregivers. What you go through, we don't know because you don't tell us what you do. You speak out, you tell us what you go through. There are mechanisms to train yourself to be more effective. Join organization like Caregiver Saathi. There are so many resources. Be more effective for the person whom you are caring for. You will get more blessings. Okay? A person who is not in pain is able to bless. When you are in severe pain, you are not able to be in a position to bless someone, and you will feel happy about it. And let our tribe of people. And I'm now talking about Caregiver Saathi and those who think or work for caregivers. Their tribe is, just hardly I can count on fingers people who work or think for caregivers. I think we need, if there are say 1 million patients, there will be at least 2 million caregivers, and there should be at least few thousand people who think for caregivers, and that is the need. Unfortunately, we can have only a handful of people, but let our tribe grow.
Thank you for that. Let our tribe grow. I'm sure there are many more. I they will join. They will get inspired. One of the things that I would like to finally ask you is that caregiving journeys come to an end, and then there are these people who are so-called experienced caregivers. There are many who may feel कि मुझे जो करना था मैंने कर लिया, मेरी caregiving over, अब I don't want to do anything with बीमारी, illness, etc. We actually want to reach out to experienced caregivers so that they can support active caregivers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you have said a very important thing. As I said, that there are so few people. So they could be trainers, like you said, train the trainers.
Yes.
What happens is that they don't want to relive those memories.
Yes.
Okay? And that has happened because they have a complicated bereavement. Okay? That's why I said that. So their bereavement has not been a natural, they have a complicated bereavement, and that is what is stopping them to think about it. Someone who has, I'm telling you, cancer patient, a patient dies, तो उनकी पूरी फाइल जला देते हैं, कुछ भी रखते नहीं, because that memory, it haunts them. Some people have told me they live in Bombay, they will find any, if their brother or their son has died in Tata Hospital, they will find route. If they have to go to Parel, they will find a different route so that they don't have to see the face of Tata Memorial Hospital. It's sort of gave earlier, if you had a uncomplicated bereavement or a natural bereavement, then this is less likely that you will not come forward. Actually, the best of the caregiver advisors are those who have been caregivers. If you look at it, like your own example, your mother, and that's how your motivation goes. So they can, but my advice is that sometimes people think that what they did was necessarily the right thing. The illness may be different, the person whom you're providing care for may be different. Each one of them have a personality. It's good that we have a personality. We're all not alike. We're not clones. Okay? So they may react to different ways. Their personal, social, and family situation may be different. So, but broadly, the caregivers can give support, psychological support, tell them what they went through, and if they have a message, how they overcame. How they were initially themselves paralyzed. The mind was sort of frozen. How they sort of went through. And when you hear from someone who has gone through that journey, it has a much bigger impact than reading a book or just a pamphlet or something like that. So they have a major role, and I think they will be doing service to the love and affection with which they care for their, the person they're near and dear. So they say in our mythology that someone is sitting, so you are basically serving them. So that is also very important. People should come forward, and there's a need. Actually, I would just beg them to come forward, help people, and that is what the main difference.
Thank you. With that, I'm so grateful. You have helped us convey so many things in such a beautiful, precise manner. It's great to be mentored by you. It's great to have your support, Dr. Rajiv. And I have to say that, we can't be guided only by films and how films have positioned cancer and caregivers. And
It was my pleasure talking to you, and I hope more people will come forward.
yes, I'm sure with your energy, I'm sure they will come forward.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you.
I'll join in the Q&A session now.
Yes, thank you. And we have Dr. Rajiv back
Yeah, yeah.
from an international trip right back.
Yeah.
How lovely is that?
So, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Bhavna. In between, I went to Singapore and then I went to Delhi and many other places. I attended meetings and came back in between the 2 hours that we got.
Yes, thank you. So I have a bunch of questions here, and I'm going to try and address them, pick them up one by one. Um, so there is one question that came before the session started. Let me
Uh,
first read that. It was about, as a caregiver, how can we ensure that we keep faith that the person will recover, and how to provide willpower to the person who is suffering?
okay. See, I'll address this question in a different way. Each medical condition has its own course. Your doctor would be able to guide you specifically. Unfortunately, while on one hand many conditions are controlled, cured forever, unfortunately there are more diseases, especially when you become a chronic caregiver, where the outcome may not be as good. Like someone has a stroke, in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months time, they have recovered 90%. And by the end of 2 years, they have almost recovered 99%. But everyone is not that lucky to have. Many of them would have more permanent this thing. Some cancer patients, if they are very far advanced or incurable cancers, your doctor will be able to tell you the chances of cure of this cancer is very slim. So you should know the facts. Facts
Mm,
may hurt you at that point of time, but should note the facts as much, and the doctor can tell you the best fact. And when doctors say, uh, this is in their estimate. If we have, when we say if we have 100 patients like this, and when we say like this, means we take into account the disease, the age, the general health of the person, and so many other things. And then we say if we have 100 patients like this, on an average, about half of them would recover, make a major recovery. About one quarter of them would have only slight recovery, and the remaining one quarter would have no recovery at all. So this they would say. And in the beginning you will not be able to tell that, doctors are not gods. Okay, so we based on our experience and the studies, we tell what happens. Same way, suppose it is cancer which is fourth stage or recurrent cancer, we say the chances of you being alive, say in 2 years or 5 years time, these are the probabilities. So knowing the facts and what has happened, I'll bring this one up. So there is so much, so वो ये एक term होता है कि वो सहन नहीं कर पाएंगे. Okay, they will get a shock. My mother will not be able to bear this shock, or my husband or my wife will not be able to bear this shock. I think we grossly underestimate the capacity of human mind. How much, what all shocks we can take. Of course, some people are broken, but these are occasional people, these are outliers. An average person, how much shock and pain, mental pain I'm talking of, not physical pain, we can actually take it and still remain functional and logical. That is surprising. Unless until you go through it yourself, or you see someone else going through that, you won't believe that actually someone can take that. So there are two kinds of families, I would say. One which try to keep top secrecy with the patient, what is going to happen. And in the other, they right from beginning, I mean not from day one, but at some stage they'll start sort of allow that discussion to happen about the prognosis or what is the likely outcome. In others, it will be hush hush, no one will discuss that, because that is a negative thought, and it will demoralize the person, they'll be heartbroken. And what I have seen is families where things are, everyone tries to hush up, they actually suffer during that time and later also.
Mm.
They suffer the most. There is never a closure in such families. Okay, it remains like a sort of a open festering wound. So I think get the facts to the best of your extent. Ask the doctor about uncertainty. Doctors are not God, so that uncertainties, and as and when it is possible, bring that up.
Mm.
A person who's dying may also have a wish.
Yes.
They are not objects to be just be there on that cot, and they have to be fed, and it is, I mean, all our life we have been eating and drinking. You are not living just to be fed or cleaned and this thing. They may want to go somewhere, they may want to call someone. You do not know who was your mother's best friend when she was in school.
Yes.
Suddenly she might remember her and may want to talk to her, and the mother's best friend would never know that my best friend right now is in the last 6 months of her life fighting cancer. So I think, and ultimately everyone knows the truth, but by the time they know the reality, they are completely, they are then moribund. They
Mm.
many times, and I believe it, they don't have even energy to think. Even thinking requires energy. They are so exhausted, they are so fatigued. And I think at that time it is very cruel, but that time the reality comes to them. Even animals when they die, I'm telling you, even animals when they die in the last, this thing, they understand that I'm not going to make it.
Yes.
Same is true with humans, and experienced human beings would know weeks or months in advance, I'm not going to make it.
Yes.
And then such superficial silly talks goes around.
I think for us to shift the narrative around dying and say that this transition can be made with dignity,
Yes,
with beauty.
I say that, people laugh at it, but I see, like, talk of quality of life, there is quality of death also.
Absolutely.
Death is a process, it is not an event. It
Yes.
just doesn't happen. Of course, finally we say that this person has died at at on say 29th at 12 p.m,
Yes,
but it's a process.
it is.
Closure, the person who's dying, whether you believe in soul or not, whatever else is there, but the person who till the time their mind is working, they are thinking, they have emotions, they have psyche. and it is not nice to go in pain. See, physical pain, after some time, no, you stop experiencing physical pain. Someone's leg is cut also, they will cry for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. After some time, they will stop crying.
Yes.
But the pain in the mind is there till the time you are dying, if you know, if your brain hasn't stopped working.
That's
So I think open communication, knowing what that person wants to know, it could only help. I cannot see, don't think of what will happen immediately.
mm,
You think of the long term, whatever this person's life is and your own life. And I again and again say, bereavement is a, you know, complicated bereavement can destroy so many lives.
yes.
If and the best thing for a simple, uncomplicated or normal bereavement, I would not say bereavement is never simple, but a normal bereavement is that there was a communication, people could, you know, relate to each other, they
Yes.
could pour their heart out.
Yeah.
I always ask my patients ki, on their attendant, as long as you're not crying alone, it's all right. If you're crying in front of each other, it is very normal.
Yes.
Even if you have lived in a house for 40 years, when you're leaving that house, you have to sell that house. You know, I will not be surprised that many people will have a tear in their eye.
Of course.
Okay, so it's you know, you are leaving behind the world that you know. That's the only world that you know. We do not know there's an afterworld or not. You know, who knows?
Yes.
So it's all right to feel emotional, to cry, but crying alone is a crime.
Mm,
Okay, someone has to cry alone, and that people do because what people feel that कि वो उनको शॉक लग जाएगा, वो कैसे वो बर्दाश्त करें. शॉक लगता है, जरूर लगता है. I'm not denying that, but that shock is much milder than the pain of going through your emotions alone, not being able to speak. And I'll tell so many times what happens, इतना drama होता है, someone is talking this, someone, then the whole world comes to know. I'll narrate one incident. One patient of mine, I also treat hereditary cancers. So this young lady, she her mother died of ovarian cancer. Later on, she developed breast cancer, and I treated her. So she narrated the story. She was like a teenage girl, and you know, and that time like a teenager, she was thinking like a teenager from Bombay. This, that, all those things, and her mother was dying of ovarian cancer, and it was perfectly concealed from her. One morning when she got up, then she saw so many relatives were there, and her mother was, you know, no more in the home. Everyone has, you know, on her death, everyone's collected. And she said they had sort of connived. It was like a conspiracy to shield her completely. And what happened? This girl, just imagine. I mean, she was not a small child, 2 or 3 or 5 year old. She could never connect, spend that time with her mother she should have spent because she was kept in. Okay. So I'm just talking of the other end. Many times it is the other side and they feel it's a very painful discussion. Unfortunately, on one end, we say in our mythology, everything is, you know, there's no life and death. It is just, you know, transition and all that. But death is such a taboo subject. We dread to say that.
yeah. अपशगुन है.
अब शगुन है, कैसे बोलने से कुछ थोड़ी ना कुछ हो जाता है. So I think communication and this thing, you hope for the best, prepare for the worst, know the facts, talk to your doctor in your own way, you know, see that the person knows, you know, maybe like in some neurological condition you would have seen, you know, that this person, it's only a matter of 1 or 2 months, after this person will become wheelchair bound and it will be progressive.
Yes.
So till that person, अगर तब तक उसके बारे में बात ही नहीं किया, so you will keep visiting to the hospital and physiotherapist. That is all you would do. Maybe that person would have wanted to go to Mahabaleshwar that time and
Mm,
stand on the railing and see peep down from there, but you haven't given that opportunity because वो सब नाटक चल रहा था.
correct. So there is another question around understanding palliative care, which is that, maybe palliative care, which is more holistic, which is about understanding pain in all its dimensions, not just physical pain, uh, maybe, and not just for the patient, but for the full family. Can it start much ahead rather than it be confused with only when there is no cure or when it is end of life? I think.
So it's a very good question. These are two things. One is terminal care and other is palliative care.
Yes.
Terminal care is when, just basically you tender loving care in the last few days or last few weeks or maybe a month or two of the person's life. Okay, the goals of terminal care could be different. You preparing the person, see that the person, but palliative care, palliative care, when we say, is when you provide good symptom control. You know that you cannot cure this condition. It
Mm,
could be a neurological condition, it could be cancer, it could be some other condition. You know it cannot be cured, but you can control the symptoms to some extent. And between that time when a person's disease become incurable till
mm,
the stage when they are terminally ill, when they are, and when a person is terminally ill, then generally they will be bed bound, there will be complete fatigue. You know what a terminally ill patient, I mean, anyone, your neighbor will also come and say this person is terminally ill.
mm.
Okay, so when a person is terminally ill, they have very little energy reserve, they're completely exhausted.
Yeah.
The goal and the care of a terminally ill person is very different, but a palliative care, a person may be, I would say, 90% functional,
Yeah.
still may have an incurable condition.
Yes.
And this stage may be there for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year.
Yes.
And normally you say, what is that 3 months? But for a person who is not going to be there to be alive, 3 months of functional status is a huge bonus. There's so much.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about living your last wishes.
Yeah,
It's about,
yeah, yeah. And I tell everyone when we go on a holiday to Europe or wherever, Singapore, we go for 3 days, 5 days. Now, how much we do in those 3 or 5 days? Because we give premium to that time. We have spent so much of money. Hotel is so expensive. Travel. So do not discount. What even few days can, how much happiness and memories can it be created? I have a patient who has advanced incurable cancer, but she may live for a year or maybe longer. So she has a daughter, a young daughter. So she says, I want to create memories and for my daughter and for myself when while I'm here. So she has her goals. So each person would have different goals, and I think each one of us are entitled to our life. But provided we know that things are this, most of the times it doesn't sort of reach that stage.
I think fear overtakes sometimes, and
I
more
think
than
it is a
fear.
social more than fear. It's not that we are particular. See, in the West, it is very different. Patients, right from beginning, the diagnosis they know, and when their cancer becomes incurable, they know. I mean, they know about it. The
Yeah.
you cannot. If someone has been kept in dark, completely in dark, they may not talk to each other, but the patient would definitely know that it's not possible. That patient would not know. Here, when it is there at the, and old people and women, they are at the mercy of others in the family who would decide how much my mother or how much my old father would know or not know.
Yeah. No, and I think your point about underestimating sometimes our parents who have gone through a very difficult life
Yeah.
and thinking कि नहीं अब हम उनको protect कर लेंगे is such a myth.
I
Uh,
mean, I tell them, "Kalyan, what do you think your mother is? Do you think she is weak? If she had weak, so much, she knows so much more about life.
yes.
It that way anyway. Just because if you love, see love for your child also. Mothers love their child the most, but they know just some mothers would be overprotective, others would let them this thing. So I think, and it's what I tell them, if you were in their place, the whole world had conspired your daughter and kept you in the dark. In the end, towards the end, you would come to know how would you feel. You will feel very angry.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think we can do a lot better in terms of coming to terms with, communication and whose right is it, the patient's right to know and to lead their life the way that they would like to lead. Of course, it has to be a healthy balance between the patient and the caregiver. We have some acknowledgement of the point that you made around gender, which is that Jagrati, who is here on in our session, she said that women tend to be taken for granted.
Yeah.
There was, in fact, a Times of India survey which said that 74% of caregivers in India are daughters-in-law,
Yeah, must be.
and they sometimes don't have the decision-making capacity. They may not have financial independence. but they are the caregivers.
You're
Uh,
right. I mean, it is pretty obvious.
yeah, yeah,
But I think in the future, caregivers will be very different, So I do not know because daughter-in-laws are also working.
yes,
They've been working since the time they were 23, 24. They have at
yes,
20 as of this thing. So they may not, give up. And the money they bring home is also very important to pay EMIs or to get that milk or to get,
yes.
go for that holiday. It's very important. So I do not know what will happen.
So
So.
it is going to be challenging, and it is going to be challenging even for workplaces and things like that. There is one other question. It's a difficult question. I don't know whether that person is in the call today, but this question came at the time of registration. The question is that both my parents have stage 4 cancer, and I have lost two jobs because of their multiple chronic illness. Or twice I had to sacrifice my job because my organization didn't support me. Are there any rules or laws to safeguard the employment of such caregivers? um,
Unfortunately, no.
no,
Unfortunately, no. There
no.
is nothing, this thing, and people, and actually, most of the people, that's why they will not come forward. They will, to some extent, they will do. And one thing I don't know, I did not mention that the guilt, the person who's being cared for, the amount of guilt they have,
Yes,
they feel miserable.
yes.
Many of them. So it's a very common thread. They feel so miserable that because of me,
Mm,
this person's life, and they know what their daughter or their son or their husband or their wife used to do earlier.
yes.
I've not seen this feeling in husbands for their wives that their wives are suffering, but except that, they feel so bad, miserable, especially if it is a mother. All her life she has done for others, and now they feel so helpless that because of her, the whole family is turned sort of upside down, that dynamics. They feel very bad about it. They
I'm
don't,
glad
many
you're
of them
saying that,
do
Dr.
not want to
Rajiv.
live just for this reason.
I know. I'm glad you're saying that because at least for me, for somebody who has, who's like very triggered by gender differences, I know for sure that, like men will take it for granted. कि मेरा तो
Uh,
ध्यान रखना ही रखना है.
uh. Just
Whereas
imagine if a wife was, paralyzed for 3 years and her husband has to stop, all his daily activity. Oh, that wife will be so miserable. She'll be just crying in the bed.
I know, but society will also respond differently.
Uh,
This, when a man is a caregiver,
uh.
he is made into a god.
ओ साधु भगवान देखो अपनी वाइफ के लिए इतना कर रहे हैं भाई को.
Yes, and when it is a woman who's a caregiver, but that's her
That
role.
is expected.
Anyway, we are out of time, but I am so grateful for your presence in Caregiver Saathi's life, in my life,
Yeah.
and the incredible work that you have been doing for decades. Thank you for making the time today. I
I'll
was
just
telling
uh,
before,
I'll just say one thing. Since many things touched upon gender, but I think women, as a see nature, they've made men and women. Okay, and sometimes the gender is not very clear in the mind or in the body. I think nature has made women such a way that caring is very instinctive for them. It's not that men do not care, but it does not come as such a natural instinct. So they come forward more, and people realize that, and they are exploited for that. So that is also one thing, and they should not leave their instinct of being caring. But I think society should share their burden, and if not give them respect for that, at least give them respite.
oh, lovely. I like that quotation. I'm
Yeah,
going to use that.
yeah, sure.
And I certainly love that point that I think caregivers are responsible for talking about their needs and their pains
Yeah.
because only the crying child gets the milk.
Okay.
So, yes,
Nice
thank
talking to
you.
all of you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We will bring this webinar to an end. And I am just going to ask for everybody to, put in your feedback and suggestions. Um and about today's session, what is else that you would like for us to cover. And with that, we will bring this session to a close. Thank you very much for spending your Friday evening with us.
Okay. And I'm done for the day. Third one.
You're a rock star. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye. Please leave your feedback and we will be in touch. Thank you very much, Lipika. I hear you. I'm a little touched and I don't know what how to respond to your comment. But I'd like to let you know that whatever we can do from Mumbai, we would like to support you. So if you can reach out to me via email, I would like to consider how we can help set up a branch or a set of people for Caregiver Saathi in Orissa or wherever else. So, Lipika, I hope you're on the call, and I will be happy to work with you or anybody else to see how we can extend our capabilities to provide some kind of a support system wherever you are. All right. Thank you very much. Good to see you all. Bye bye.